In Formula One, glory is never permanent. Champions rise, fall, and sometimes vanish forever. But every so often, a team defies the odds and rewrites history. McLaren, one of the greatest names in motorsport, has lived through it all. They've built some of the most iconic cars in Formula One history, produced legendary drivers, and dominated entire decades. Yet they also endured one of the darkest periods ever seen by a top team. A humiliating fall from grace that almost destroyed them. And then, against all odds, they came back. This is the story of McLaren's spectacular downfall and their incredible journey back to the top. A story of resilience, vision, and the belief that legends, no matter how far they fall, can always rise again. The origins of a legend. The McLaren story begins in 1966 with a young driver from New Zealand, Bruce McLaren. Determined to build something of his own, he founded the team that would carry his name. Just 2 years later, Bruce himself gave McLaren its first Formula One victory at the 1968 Belgian Grand Prix. The dream was alive, but tragedy struck in 1970 when Bruce died in a testing accident at Goodwood. The team could easily have collapsed. Instead, they pushed forward. Under Teddy Mayer, McLaren won its first world championship with Emerson Fittipaldi in 1974. From there, McLaren never looked back. The arrival of Ron Dennis in 1981 transformed McLaren into a dynasty. With the financial backing of Marlboro and the engineering brilliance of John Barnard, McLaren redefined what it meant to dominate Formula One. Think about this. From the mid-1980s through the early 1990s, McLaren was the team. With drivers like Niki Lauda, Alain Prost, and Ayrton Senna, they collected world titles and gave fans some of the most unforgettable rivalries in the sport. The MP44 of 1988 remains the most dominant F1 car ever built. 16 races, 15 wins, a symbol of perfection. With Mika Häkkinen, they challenged Ferrari before their dominance, winning 2 world championships at the turn of the millennium. And in 2008, Lewis Hamilton gave McLaren its most recent title, a thrilling last corner championship in Brazil. For decades, McLaren was synonymous with greatness, but as history shows, even giants stumble. The decline. After 2012, the cracks began to show. Lewis Hamilton, the future of the sport, left McLaren for Mercedes. At the time, it seemed like a gamble. Few believed Mercedes could topple the greats, but Hamilton's departure would mark the beginning of McLaren's collapse. In 2013, McLaren endured its worst season in decades. No wins, no podiums, and only a handful of memorable moments. For the first time since 1980, McLaren wasn't even close to the front. This ended up costing the team, forcing them to face a restructuring. One of them, for example, was that Mercedes, which had been their partner for a long time, now only saw them as a customer team, as they had their own structure in the category. The solution, McLaren believed, lay in the past. They announced a reunion with Honda for 2015, hoping to recreate the magic of the Senna-Prost era. Fans dreamed of a return to dominance. Instead, they got a nightmare. The Honda hybrid engine was underpowered, unreliable, and embarrassing. Fernando Alonso's infamous outburst became the defining soundbite of McLaren's suffering. Between 2015 and 2017, McLaren was a shadow of itself. Former champions were fighting just to get out of Q1 in qualifying. Instead of podiums, they celebrated finishing in the points. When the Honda partnership collapsed in 2017, McLaren switched to Renault engines. But even then, the problems persisted. The car was still weak. The structure was broken. The leadership lacked direction. By 2018, McLaren was no longer feared. They were pitied. A new era of leadership. Every fall creates an opportunity for rebirth. Ron Dennis ended up being fired from his position and forced to sell his share of McLaren. And by 2016, McLaren brought in Zak Brown. At this point in history, Zak was known for being the owner of United Autosport, a team founded in 2009, known for winning historic competitions like the 24 Hours of Le Mans, being multiple champions in categories like the European Le Mans Series, champion in 2020 of the World Endurance Championship in the LMP2 category, and a long resume that validated his experience in motorsport. So the guy was not unknown, but now he faced a completely different and the biggest challenge of his career as a motorsport business manager. His task would be the not-so-simple job of returning McLaren to the highest historical step of world motorsport, practically from the bottom. Brown knew that success wouldn't come overnight. He focused on long-term investment, facilities. He identified that they suffered from a huge lag in their facilities. They needed a new wind tunnel, advanced simulators, and upgrades to the McLaren Technology Center. Personnel, bringing in the right leaders like Andreas Seidel as team principal and James Key as technical director. Drivers, combining experienced drivers like Carlos Sainz and Daniel Ricciardo with drivers from the McLaren Driver Academy like Lando Norris. Slowly, the tide began to turn. Signs of life. By 2019, McLaren was showing real progress. They finished fourth in the constructors' standings, their best result in years. Even more importantly, they secured their first podium since 2014 when Carlos Sainz stood on the rostrum in Brazil. It wasn't a win, but it felt like one. For McLaren, it was proof that the giant could wake again. In 2020, they improved further, finishing third in the championship despite the challenges of a pandemic-hit season. And in 2021, McLaren finally gave its fans a moment they'd been waiting for, a race victory. At Monza, Daniel Ricciardo shocked the world by taking the win, followed closely by Lando Norris in second. It was McLaren's first 1-2 finish since 2010. The celebrations were wild. McLaren was back, and for a brief moment, it felt like the glory days had returned. Setbacks and struggles, but Formula One never stands still. The 2022 season introduced a whole new era of car regulations, and McLaren stumbled badly. Their car was uncompetitive, plagued with technical issues, especially with brake cooling. While Red Bull surged ahead, McLaren slipped backward again. Internally, things also shifted. Andreas Seidel left to join Sauber, and Daniel Ricciardo's struggles meant McLaren had to part ways with him earlier than planned. For many teams, this could have sparked another downward spiral, but McLaren had learned from their past. Instead of collapsing, they adapted. The true revival. 2023 marked a turning point. With a reshuffled technical structure and new leadership in the garage, McLaren began the season poorly, but then unleashed one of the most impressive comebacks in modern F1. The arrival of Oscar Piastri, a rookie with incredible talent, gave them a dynamic pairing alongside Lando Norris. Together, they brought both stability and excitement. Through aggressive development, McLaren transformed their car mid-season. By July, the same team that struggled to escape Q1 was suddenly fighting for podiums. Norris collected a string of second-place finishes, while Piastri won the sprint race in Qatar, his first F1 victory in any format. It was the clearest sign yet. McLaren wasn't just recovering, they were back. McLaren today and tomorrow. Now, McLaren stands at the edge of something special. They have the drivers. Lando Norris is the face of the future, consistent, quick, and loyal. Oscar Piastri is a rising star, calm under pressure, and already proving he can take the fight to anyone. They have the leadership. Zak Brown has built a culture of accountability and ambition, while their technical department, now armed with a state-of-the-art wind tunnel and simulator, finally has the tools to challenge the best. And most importantly, they have belief. From humiliation and mockery, McLaren has risen to once again stand among Formula One's elite. In 2024, they have won the Constructors' Championship, and now they are the best team. The story of McLaren is not just about cars, races, or trophies. It's about resilience. It's about refusing to give up, even when the world laughs at you. It's about rediscovering your identity, your strength, and your pride. McLaren fell harder than almost any other great team in Formula One history. But today, they are proof that no matter how deep the fall, with vision, courage, and persistence, you can rise again. And now, the question is no longer whether McLaren is back. The only question is, which of their drivers will become champion?